it's interesting way of troubleshooting this, right? To see because if this works, then it's a Facebook.
Mhm. Right.
I'll tell everyone to go to the Quantum Healers. You know what? I think we're going to be live on YouTube. Because if this works, then it's Facebook. It is. It absolutely is. Guess what? We're live on YouTube and we're recording.
Hello.
Hi everyone, this is Candace Craw Goldman, and it is time for Midnight with Mario. And we had originally tried to begin this show at midnight, exactly where Mario is from, in Germany, there in Frankfurt, a few minutes ago, 14 minutes ago, on Facebook, because that's primarily where we've been interacting before. And Facebook just didn't want to play with us today. We tried about 5 different times. We were thinking about possibly just recording it with ourselves. I said, you know what, let's see if we can go to YouTube. And here we are. So Mario, hi. Welcome.
We did it.
We did it. I'm so happy that we are finally going live. Not exactly where we thought we were going to go live. I am going to make a Facebook post and tell everyone to meet us on YouTube. But what are we going to talk about tonight? I'll let our viewers know what we're going to talk about tonight while I tell everyone how to find us.
Well, I have had a lot of stuff happening since we did our first episode. That was all geared towards one specific theme, basically, which is the female, the feminine. You know, the rise of this wonderful energy that this world needs. I've had a couple of sessions in which this was addressed, and I have also had some results coming in from doing statistics, you know, on my clients. Very interesting. Because for some reason, I'm German, so we all know why. That's the German in me. I started doing like statistics from client number 1 on, and I just recently reviewed them, and I found out that 2/3 of my clients are actually female. And I kind of knew that there were always like more women coming for sessions than men, but I didn't know that the number was that high, you know. And it was just interesting. I think we talked about this like for a second a couple of days ago or weeks ago. But yeah, 2/3 of my clients are women, and I was wondering, why is that, you know? And how's that with you?
Well, you know, it's interesting hearing you say that, because actually 2/3 is an improvement from what it used to be. When I first started studying quantum healing back in 2008 with Dolores Cannon, the classes and the clients, I would say the classes were 4/5 to 3/4 women. And my clients were easily 9 out of 10 were women. I mean, it was far more women.
Oh, okay.
However, this idea of the divine feminine still is making a play. It's coming into the sessions, both for the female and the male who are coming. We as a society are working out this gender thing, right? I mean, it used to be, that just gave me shivers. It used to be very boxed in how it all worked. And all you have to do is take a look at what's politically correct these days in some of the community conversations out there, gender identity, pronouns, all that kind of stuff. We as humans, we're trying to figure this stuff out, right? It's not as cut and dry. There was always people who didn't fit in to these boxed in stereotypical definitions of what it was to be male or female. It's always been that way. But we finally in the last couple decades are talking about it and talking about it openly. But humans are like this, right? We don't do anything little, right? We swing way in one direction and way in the other direction. And in some groups these days, you can get in trouble by just kind of, using the wrong pronoun, not for any reason other than you just don't know what preferences are wanted with the people that you might be talking with right now. And it's kind of a strange place to be on the planet right now. We are figuring this thing out, the divine feminine and the divine masculine as well, because, right? We don't want to lose the masculine part of us and the divine part of that part of us either.
No, not at all. No. I'm just reminded of something. Have you heard of the show RuPaul's Drag Race?
Well, no, but I know who Rupaul is, and that sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, he has a show on Netflix. And this show has been actually on air for 10 years, but it has only entered like the mainstream in the last couple of years when Netflix got the rights to offer it, and it went to VH1. I think that's a popular like TV channel in America, yeah. And it's a show about drag queens. It's a show about men, like professional drag queens, men who are very good at female impersonation. And of course, there's also an element of camp to it and like totally over the top. Like, you have seen drag queens, like, I don't know, have you? Of course, yeah. And it's a reality TV show, and it just like presents this very small niche of amazing and wonderful art to the world, and it is taking the world by storm. In the last years, I think Drag Race has won a lot of Emmys and awards. And what I want to come to is I have a very wonderful group of friends. We're like four guys, and we actually recently held a drag party.
Did you?
We did. We like changed our gender for the night, and it was just amazing. Such a great experience. Like, I know that we all have this male and female part inside of us, but to give it that opportunity for expression was just amazing. So
why do you think it's been? Because of course it's been this way. It's always been a little more acceptable for the female to put on, a tomboy act as a child, or a suit and tie as an older version of femaleness. That's always been a little more accepted by our society. Why do you think that is?
It's an interesting question. I remember my university, I studied cultural anthropology, and we had that topic in a seminar. And I remember there's quite a lot of literature out there about it. I think because there's a spectrum of strength and to weakness. And if a woman changes her appearance in a more male way, she is like climbing up on the spectrum. She's becoming like stronger in a way. While men, when they turn into women, they appear as more weak. And in our Western society, I think weakness is not something that people strive for. So, and especially in male communities, you know, like it is almost like an insult to be considered weak or weaker than another man. So I think men have no tolerance for that. RuPaul, in interviews, he usually says like, becoming a woman as a man is almost like a betrayal to the patriarchy. You know, it's like an act of betrayal, because that is like not in line at all with the ideals, you know.
That's really interesting. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Well, we were going to talk today about how some of this has played out in some sessions. I had a session not long ago with a young man who actually has a really big following. I mean, you absolutely can call him a celebrity. And part of his session was the meeting of the female part of him and the male part of him. And it was very, very interesting. This, you know, this was a BQH session, a Beyond Quantum Healing session. So anything goes in these sessions. Yeah. And where a lot of people have past lives, there was really no past life thing happening in this session at all. And when these different aspects of him showed themselves, you know, he was, of course, laying down and had his eyes closed. And the two aspects were right there. I asked him to describe, you know, because I still didn't know what was going on. Well, who's there? Who's in front of you? I wasn't sure. And how did we even get there? Well, we were talking about the control. Who's controlling what's going on in your life? And it was definitely this guy, right? There's this man. And then there was the other being over here was female. And it was very interesting. And so I, as a practitioner, was viewing this and wondering, and I said, well, please, you know, can you describe them? And he did. And the most interesting thing he said to me, and that I picked up on, and that I used my intuition that it was an important thing, was they weren't really facing each other. They were like this, right? This one was facing him and this one was facing him. And I said, well, can they see each other? And he said, I don't know. I don't even know. So we talked about, and there was like this great big line of demarcation. They were, you know, they were both addressing and concentrating on him, but they weren't addressing or acknowledging each other. And one of the biggest turning points in our session was when I suggested or asked them to, can they face each other? And then I said, Mario, I was like, well, what happens now? You know, I'm actually, you know, it's like, well, now that they're acknowledging each other, what happens? And that's when we had the breakthrough. You know, they shook hands, they began a dialogue, and what I understood was happening on some level here was not only was a divine masculine and divine feminine sort of coming into balance like that and acknowledging each other, right? It didn't have to be one, it didn't have to be the other. But I think my guides, my team is telling me this isn't just symbolic, and it's not just energetic. It's literally the brain too. The very, you know, left portion of the brain, the very right portion of the brain. And having this session, he was creating more actual physical connections between both parts of his brain so that it would work more effectively. And it was amazing.
Yeah, I bet. That sounds wonderful.
It was wonderful.
When you talked about these two I don't know, entities, two Oh my God, I have to like come back into English. Like I've spent a whole day just talking German. I'm so sorry. I'm like trying to find words. Okay, well, um, I am like a big fan of Seth, right? Of Jane Roberts and those channelings. And I remember when he, in one of his books, talked about the animus and the anima. Have you ever heard of that?
I have.
Mhm. And he explained how every man-born human has this female part inside of him, the anima, and every woman that is being born has this animus inside of her, and these parts are vital in balancing those energies. And they're also connected to like a son would have a very strong connection to his mother because of his anima, and the other way around. I don't get all the details, but I was just reminded of that when you talked about the two, you know, because we all have them.
Yeah. So I actually pulled some files too, to tell you the truth. I pulled files of some clients, and one of the other times that I remember the divine feminine really coming in strongly was a session I had a few years ago with a man who, when he came in, it was really interesting. I wrote about this on our forum. I may copy it and put it into the BQH student category so that people can read more about the actual real details of the therapy session. But we can still talk about it here publicly in this way, in such session summary way. The guy walked in and he was one of those like motorcycle dudes. I mean, tall guy and big guy, big boned. And he had, you could tell even before he told me, he had gained a lot of weight, but he'd lost a lot of weight. So he had a lot of like sagging skin on him. I don't know if you've ever seen anyone who's, had been quite obese and then managed to lose some weight. So he had like a lot of skin hanging off him. He was a little self-conscious about that, but he was the, motorcycle dude, boots, jeans. He had the chain on the belt loops, a knife hanging there, all that kind of thing, kind of scruffy beard. And I mean, just man through and through. Right. And the fella sat down and he just it's one of the longest interviews I've ever had. I kept trying to get him to wrap it up so that we could get started doing the session. And he'd had another session with somebody else and it didn't work out like he had wanted to. And we were going on, and I'd already like passed my record. And I looked at my notes. We talked for 4 hours before we even got started. Wow. And that's already, some sessions are over by then, right? And this guy was still just talking. But it wasn't until we passed hour 3 that he looked at me, because I kept trying to gently bring him back to, we need to get to the main points here and get going, a lot we're doing here today. And he finally kind of took a big deep breath and he said, I think I'm finally comfortable enough with you now. And I'm thinking, okay. And he's like, so now I'm going to tell you really about me. And this guy was born a woman. This was a woman who had been taking hormone treatment, but had not had any of the operations physically. As a matter of fact, he bound his chest tissue, and he was quite embarrassed by all of that. But with all the other skin things going on with him, it certainly wasn't a standout feature of him physically, but this part really bothered him. And of course, he was feeling male with a female-born body. That's why he wanted the session. And he didn't even tell the other practitioner this, right? And I don't know if anyone could, by looking at this person, get any of that. I certainly couldn't, maybe some people could, but I certainly couldn't. It took that many hours for him to get comfortable to let me know why he really was there. That was the core issue of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had some health problems. He had, one of his biggest problems was neuropathy in his fingers. He couldn't feel his fingers.
Okay.
And could not feel his fingers. And that was not good for driving and, working and all of that. And he went to a past life, this fella did, as a dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm a dinosaur. And I'm like, well, so we did the thing. Are you male or female? Oh, I'm male. And then after a little bit of talking about his surroundings and what he was like, I'm not a male. I'm not a male because I have babies and the babies are right there. And the turning point in his session, it was when he said, I'm a mommy. I'm a mommy. But he was a big mommy, right? He was this great big mommy. And he just cried and cried and cried. And he really embraced this female part of him in this big, giant, lumbering body of a dinosaur, taking care gently of his babies and all of that. And he just cried buckets. He just cried buckets, and he felt, and it just went on and on about how maternal he felt and how good that felt. He was really owning the maternal part of himself that he had been trying to, deny since his birth as a human.
Wow.
But when he's this dinosaur, he embraced it. And that was the turning point of everything for him, was not to hate the part of himself any part of himself that was female, right? And once he accepted that, everything got better. And even before he left, he was feeling his fingers. It was a really, really great session. It was a long day.
Yeah, sounds like it. Beautiful.
It was a beautiful session. It was amazing. And he kept up with me for a little while after that, and had just really wonderful things to say about that. He was in his personal life, he was doing kind of an all or nothing thing, right?
Yeah.
And having this session, his higher self was basically like, you can live like this, but you must accept this part of you. You're not, a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
You're not just one way. You have many aspects to you.
Again, a wonderful example of what we talked last time, integration, right?
Right.
Hmm.
Well, what other kind of sessions have you had lately that focus on the divine feminine?
Well, I had a session that I made an online post about, actually, because it was pretty stand out, and information was given that was meant to be given to everyone, whoever finds their way to it. And Gaia came through. The consciousness of our lovely planet, and she was talking about the divine feminine, how important it is that this is now coming to the forefront of our evolution as a species, as a collective, and that hand in hand with that is her being recognized as a conscious entity. She said this is connected. It's time now for humanity to not just see the Earth as a rock floating in space, but as like a conscious entity that has like a personality and soul and all of that. And she was introducing that feminine topic to me. A week later, I had a session with another woman, and in her session, Mary Magdalene was the focal point, you know, and a lot of information was given about how that personality, how Mary Magdalene actually came to earth, came into her incarnation as an equal to Jesus, but was not acknowledged because society was not ready for that at the time. And yeah, I can see how over time her role got like a bit downgraded, or a bit like obviously downgraded to that of a prostitute.
Yeah.
You know, I guess that was kind of smart to ensure that this equality would never be, or would not be, acknowledged for a long time.
Yeah, I spent some time in Europe doing a pilgrimage, doing honor and homage to Mary Magdalene in a lot of the sites there, especially in France. And it's interesting that the culture and the people still hold a deep kind of ancestral understanding and acceptance and remembrance of Mary Magdalene, even while many of them are being still regular Catholic churchgoers. You know, it's sort of this thing that that the women talk about, but it's officially not recognized. But the groundswell and those out in the community consider it as a matter of fact. And a lot of Americans don't, and other Westerners, who aren't right in that area, don't often get to be exposed to that. They only know what they read. They only know what they're told, are official. It's not this sort of, underground information and acceptance of what that was. And some of that, well, a lot of that is bubbling up to the surface right now. And I've had countless sessions with people who've had different versions, let's say, or information streams of Mary Magdalene come through in their session that they want to access. Now we as humans, and even practitioners and clients who love this work that we do, this past life regression and quantum healing stuff, a lot of times we try to simplify it. We try to put it in a box. Well, I was Mary Magdalene in a past life is one way of looking at it, right? But that's a real singular and narrow perspective of what's going on here. And so then a lot of other humans were like, yeah, you and 100 others, and then they roll their eyes and then they want to say they discount this. But for those people out there who've never experienced this kind of work or really looked into it, a lot of what's happening here is that energy is so prevalent on the planet. And it is not unreasonable for a person to go into an altered state of consciousness and access some of that energy and bring forth some of that story in a very direct way of feeling as if they are moving through in that life. And so they do come out sometimes saying, I'm experiencing life as Mary Magdalene. And then even practitioners might say, well, if that's the case, how come this person's story was different to this person's story, and the details don't match in this one and the details don't match in this one? And you and I both know, what would Seth say about that? What would Bashar say about that? These are many different versions. This is what multidimensionality means.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. I believe as well that just because someone in a quantum healing, quantum hypnosis session goes into an incarnation does not automatically mean that they have been that. It might just be important that they experience that, or have a certain perspective, offered to them. And I think that in these sessions, the higher selves or the team of the person gives them what they need in that moment. It might not make all the critics happy that later hear about it, but that does not matter at all, because in that moment, it matters that this person is being helped, and that whatever they see, experience, live through, hear, channel, is meant for them. And we can't take all those people in consideration who might not see the logic behind it, or it's like, it's a very narrow focus, as you said, and it needs to be broad if you really want to get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this other client that I had, this beautiful woman who wanted to know her purpose in life, and I'm looking at the notes here, and she really wondered why she had trauma always on the left side of her body. I certainly understand that, because I used to call it my left disease. Anyway, what was really fascinating about this session, and this is the one I really remember, first it was a struggle for her a little bit, and you and I both know that it can be that way. It can be that way, that you struggle to even understand what's going on. They're willing, they've traveled, they're there, they're attempting to have this session, and sometimes it's sort of like this, and they don't quite know what's going on. And a lot of times it's because of, we talk about this a lot, expectations, that a movie's going to start to play, and it doesn't always work like that. Yeah. And I took copious notes here. And what I got a lot of was, I'm just seeing colors, and I'm not seeing real stuff, and I'm just floating. And then, I'm just me. I'm just me. Have you heard that one before? Haven't you? I'm just me. I haven't turned into anyone else. I'm just me here. This isn't why I came for this session. Right. And so, kind of, smiling there, but I'm looking at this, but it's just me. Can you interact with these colors? I'm doing all of what we know, to kind of keep engaged with the client.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she's like, well, I'm starting to feel something. Well, what are you starting to feel? I don't know. Kind of some energy. Actually, it's really interesting, because right as I'm saying that, I'm feeling something enter this room. I'm like, yeah, that energy. Exactly. I'm like, whoa, I'm feeling it, and it can sometimes, it's interesting, it can sometimes feel heavy, right? Or dense, but it's not heavy or dense like in the negative way. It's like it's palpable, right? It's like, I can feel that enter this room. That's what I mean. Even, and when people feel some of this energy, usually they end up talking about afterwards how light they feel. But at the time when it comes in, it's really visceral. It comes in a visceral way. And she's like, I'm suction cupped to the bed, is what she said. I'm suction cupped here. And she's like, I can't really move. And then she actually said this, when's this going to be over? I actually wrote this over. When's this going to be over? And I'm like, wait a second, it's just getting good here. Don't stop now, right?
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no story. No story happens here. And I'm just getting her to talk, And well, what's happening now? Well, the colors have disappeared. Okay, well, what's happening? Well, I only see a great big light. It's huge. It's yellow. It's a static light. It's a great big ball. It's very, very bright. It's very, very hot. And it's doing something to me, And what we and at first she's like, is this okay? I mean, she couldn't even turn her head, but she's like, is this okay? And of course we do what we do, This is what you came for. You may not get a story here, but so what comes out is when we finally are able to get a sense of this light, it too was the divine feminine, and it had these. It had the message for her that she was a human aspect of the divine feminine, incarnated as a human, that she came from that pureness. So, sparks of life come from lots of different places. Some we've learned come from the angelic realm or other places like that. But this person was, the pureness of the divine feminine that splintered off, came to the planet to become human. And then she, then that part, that divine feminine aspect of her, that great big yellow ball, answered all the questions and gave her all of her, all of her healing. But it was intense. It was intense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was about 2 days afterwards, she called me up and said, Candace, I can't stop drinking water. I can't stop sweating. My body has this little buzz thing going on. And she was a little afraid, she had a very physical life. Saying any more would give too much away, but, very physically focused life. And she had a lot of questions about what's going on, but, I encouraged her to drink more water and to not resist this. Like, if you feel something, it's like, not, oh my God, what's going on with my body? No, not tighten up, but just let it wash through you, and drink more water and let it wash through. And after it took almost 10 days, maybe, or 2 weeks, she got back to me. And then, she came out of it on the other side in so many beautiful and healing ways. Things, physical issues resolved themselves. She just felt so much better. Some of her, comfort habits that she wanted to drop just vaporized, that kind of thing. It was amazing. And she's this vibrant woman today. And every time I see her, she's shining more brightly. I remember the great big ball of the light.
Oh, that is wonderful. How cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
So did she came directly from that into this incarnation? From that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, Dolores might have called her a volunteer, right? So in Dolores Cannon's book, The 3 Waves of Volunteers, Gaia, our beautiful Dolores, Gaia and those who cared and were focused on what was going on in the planet and humans also put out a call, a call. Will you come help? We don't want to destroy the planet again. We don't want humanity to have to go, to do this again, where they've, destruction cycle. And this time it was different. So there were aspects of source and creation that had never participated in this version of reality in the physical, that kind of went, hey, I'm gonna give that a shot. One of the things that I love talking about to clients, and really to anybody, I think I said this just recently, in case anybody's hearing me repeat myself too quickly, but one of the coolest things that has become so interesting to me to think about when it's the concept of all of reality, not just planet reality, not just physical reality, but all of reality, is the concept that physical reality makes up this tiny, tiny, infinitesimal part of what all reality is. It's just very small. And most living conscious beings are not physical.
Yeah.
You know, unlike what we think Star Trek is or whatever, most of what's out there is not physical. And one of the most interesting ways I've ever heard it described is actually this way, is there are some of those beings that are conscious that aren't physical, who when they're told that there are physical beings with consciousness, they actually go, get out. No way. That's not possible. They're too low. That's physical reality. That's too dense. What? That's too low. That's too slow. How could that ever work? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you hear some things about, you know, people, you know, having a lottery ticket just to be human, right? Or really standing in line to be human. That's kind of what this is. It's not everybody does this, meaning the greater scheme of reality out there, the other parts of all of consciousness. You know, consciousness doesn't know everything about itself quite yet because it's splintered off like that, you know, and that's why we're bringing it all back and how and why we're learning in that way. And for me, that brings us right back to this whole idea of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, because for me, my understanding, the way I like to think about it is, so God or source did this thing, you know, you might call it the Big Bang, right? And got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that was the male impetus, you know, the creation and the thing going out. That's, you know, that's the out. That's the yang of the yin and yang, right? And then what happened in 2012, you know, is that the furthest reach of that happened, the furthest part of the out breath happened, and now the in breath is coming in, the yin part. So that means that this consciousness over here is coming closer to this one over here, and it's all coming back and back and back in like this. And that has, of course, you know, there's so many different ways to talk about that, what's actually going on in our solar system and the photon belt and all that kind of stuff. All of this stuff plays in. And that's why it's so much fun to do this work, because you never know when somebody lays down what it is you're going to learn. And it's usually in some way a piece of this great big puzzle.
Yeah. I love the image you just projected, like that coming together of everything, you know, like that actually makes a lot of sense, I think, when you think about integration, right? How things that seem so far away, like either through time or space or like dimension, like it's all coming together again, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like to think of it as a backwards fireworks, you know, or fireworks in reverse. So yeah, very much so.
Well, I remember Gaia when she explained a bit about herself and the situation of the collective on this planet. She said that source, like, or spirit, she said spirit creates, but she gives form to it. And I love that. She said, like, I am needed for this, you know, like it's not just about thought and expansion and like motion, it's also about condensing. She said, like, I am density, like I give density to thought. And she encouraged humans to address her as well, like not just a spirit or God or source. She said, like, talk to me. I am, you know, the the part that gives form to everything around you, to you. Like you are me, I am you. Like you are form, and I am the giver of that. So I really love that. I don't know why I just said that. Okay. Yeah.
I love that. How do you think, did she talk at all about how and why she sees herself as female? I mean, it's just something that we in this community kind of take for granted anymore, but it makes me wonder a little bit, because I haven't heard anyone really talk about this. Does that mean, all planets out there are female, or like, maybe Saturn's a male or something? I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, I don't really know. I know that, have you thought about that before?
Me neither. I think she got the closest when she said, like, I'm a birthing being.
Right.
Like in that moment, it made sense to me, like, okay, that correlates with the idea that we have of feminine, right? Like, but I don't really know either. I assume that not all planets are feminine. I think the very fact that we have used male names for other planets is witness of something of the truth, I think. Like, I think something is hidden in there, that not all planets have that.
Right, like Mars, right? Mars. No way,
yeah.
Mars is female.
And
I
no
say that and I want to laugh, but I also believe it a little bit, right?
Or take Venus, right?
Ah, there, she's the girl, for sure.
I mean, look at all these gods that were assigned to the planets, right? Like, I think there's a lot to be found there, like hidden or encoded in some way,
My German is very poor, but I, of course, as a kid, when I was trying to learn it, I'm like, okay, it's die Katze and der Hund. What's the deal? How is it all cats are female and all dogs are male? And I know it's not quite the same, but I think about that a lot. Now, do you think about that, sort of the pronoun in your native tongue, when things are referred to in that way?
Yeah, definitely. We do have a couple, like, odd ones out, that but yeah, definitely. I think the gender of a word gives identity to the thing or whatever it is. And I mean, how do you do that in English? Because in English it is like the cat, the dog. Like, do you have that gender thing, like, in your mind attached to that, or not at all?
I watch this a lot because I'm an animal person, right? And most horse people will typically refer to horses, even like young horses, as colts. And specifically, a colt is a male. A foal is either a male or a female. A colt is a male. Filly is a female. So really, there's two names for baby horses. But I have seen my whole life some, particularly men and older horse people, they'll just call them all colts, right? And I would think about that. And same with dogs and cats. It's true. Here, kitty, kitty, and it's a girl until otherwise proved differently, right? Which is such an interesting thing, and I grew up with dogs. The dogs we had in our house, they were mostly, male. And having a female dog, it's like, well, of course there's female dogs, but I don't know, I guess typically we had the girl cats and the male dogs. So, I mean, we played that game all the way to the edge, right?
I think, treating it that way is simple. It makes it all simple. And I believe that the intricacies of life were more simple back then, and the way we look at these things are probably a mirror, or potentially a mirror, of how things change nowadays. Nowadays people would think more about that, like what gender does the animal actually have, and the people from past times maybe didn't do that because it was just not how it was. What I really love about the English language, and I appreciated that when I was translating the BQH course into German, but at the same time, I kind of like hated the German language for not having a word like they, like, or was it they? Like you can talk about a group of people and keep it like neutral, but in German you have to kind of decide whether you take the female or the male form, and we don't have the luxury of taking like one for everyone, for all.
Really?
Yeah, what was that word? I think it's was it they?
It's so
Oh my
late
God.
where you are. It is so late where you are to ask your brain to go into translation mode. It's probably not very fair at all. You'll get back on that one.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, any more divine feminine things to talk about? What do you think?
Well, I feel like this topic has entered like my reality fairly recently, so I'm excited to see where this is leading towards, but it's on my radar now.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe there'll be more to come.
Yeah. I wonder, I think of you as my Seth expert, because you are so enamored with and generous also with sharing some of your, revelations, ideas that Jane Roberts put forth in all of her magnificent Seth books. But how interesting is that too? Jane Roberts, and she has her higher self come forward as this male aspect, Seth. Very interesting that too, isn't it?
He didn't call her Jane, he called her Rupert.
I know.
Right?
I know. And yes, I remember that part. I do. Because she was Rupert in another existence, right? That's how they knew each other, I think?
He said that her core entity, like the entity that she comes from, is male. The entity would identify, here it is, a word like themselves.
Okay.
That was the word I was referring to. Like you can say themselves and you mean male or female.
Yeah.
You can't do that in German. Okay, but I'm glad.
Interesting. Well, he said,
there. Yeah. Right. He said that her core entity would identify himself as male. That's why he said that name is more appropriate for her true essence than Jane.
How about you, Maria? Is your core entity male or female? Before you even answer, that one is so easy for me to answer. For me, it is also male. Hands down. I have no doubt about it. And I'm, very much a female in this lifetime. I have marriage, kids, very female. All of my significant others have been male. But I already know that my core, I just know it. It's easy. It's easy for me to. I don't know why yet, but how about you? Do you feel like you know?
It is. I have thought about that, but I am a bit worried about mixing different levels up, because obviously I'm born a male, but I have always had a very strong female part of myself, even as a child. And that might be given to me to have a certain perspective in this incarnation. But I don't want to go that far and say, I think my entity is female because of that.
Yeah.
Like it could easily be that, yeah, I have this strong feminine part, but actually my entity is male. Like,
yeah, sure.
Who
knows?
maybe I need a bit more clarity.
It'd be an interesting question to ask in a session, though, wouldn't it? Because, this is where I love Magenta Pixie's way of looking at things, because she will say statements like, from some perspective, absolutely every statement you make is true. It just depends on what perspective you're looking at. Yeah. So you could, that's why, well, you could say both. You could say my core entity is female, and then you could defend that, and you could say my core entity is male, and you could defend that too. They can be both true, maybe in some, or in some versions of reality this, and some versions of reality this, and if you back all the way up, like the fireworks, you get back. Yeah. Then of course it's true, because it's all one thing anyway, right? I kind of like that, because there's no arguing and there's no it's kind of whatever. It makes it fun, and there's no real worrying about being correct about any of this stuff.
Exactly. And we are, I think, touching the very outermost layer of this. I remember Seth saying that what we consider male and female, but that doesn't mean that an entity is actually male or female. It might just have jumped out of source and said, well, I want to explore these traits, and these kind of energy dynamics, and they might be a bit more outgoing and a bit more aggressive, and that's what he might mean with a male entity, but it's not really one or the other, as you said.
Yeah, it's all just fun. It's all just fun here playing the game. Well, what do you think we might talk about next time? Got any ideas? Oh, you know what? We do. We actually have a show set up with Debbie Hazelton. That's what we're going to do next time. Do you remember what we're going to talk about with her?
Well, seeing.
That's right. That's right.
Seeing. Yeah. All the different versions of seeing. And I'm very excited about that, actually. Yeah.
I'm so excited about that. I have come to, for those of you who are watching who might not know who Debbie Hazelton is, she's an amazing woman who was born with no sight. She's completely blind. She's a radio personality, but she's also a BQH practitioner. And she's been doing sessions online and in person, even being sightless. And so she brings a marvelous perspective, well, to everyone, to the world, but especially here in our community and people who are interested in quantum healing, because a lot of times we really focus on, well, what do you see? What is it that you're seeing? And so she's got an excellent perspective about what all of this is, because she doesn't see anything in the physical sense the way Mario and I do. So that's the show that we're going to do next. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but I'll put it in the show notes. And
I think it will be 3 weeks from now, right?
That's right, because you're going on vacation, on holidays. And this is, people keep using that word in my life, vacation and holiday. I mean, I know it exists, but someday somebody's gonna have to prove it to me so that I can.
It's real. It's real, Candace. It's a real thing.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I take
you should try it sometime.
In my head, yeah. Yeah, someday maybe. Mario, thank you so much for spending time with me today and going through
My pleasure.
the really weird thing about Facebook not wanting to play with us. So, okay, Facebook, we went to YouTube anyway. Today I like YouTube better. So yay. And thank you for, gosh, all of you people who showed up to play with us today who are chatting in the YouTube chat box. We had lots of people show up today.
You know what just came to mind? If you look at the name like Facebook and it's blue, right? And you have YouTube, which is a much softer word, and you have a red color. Maybe we will, you know, we needed a more feminine like energy to broadcast us.
Maybe, yeah, you need a little red cardinal on that shelf. I'm gonna have to send it to you. All right. Well, just to remind everyone, that Mario is actually translating the BQH course into German. So for those of you out there who might be bilingual or know of people who speak German who might be interested in this work, we are working really hard on finishing all that up to get you all access to a German version of the Beyond Quantum Healing course. And you can sign up for the English course right now. And when the German course becomes available, we'll get you access to that. We're working out all those details right now. But Mario's my dude. Mario's my Deutschmann doing this. And thank you so much for that and for all of the support that you've provided to our healing community at quantumhealers.com and our support forum, all the years that you've done that, and for being, of course, my really good friend. I appreciate you.
Oh, same here, Candace. Thank you for everything you do. It's a pleasure working with you.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, till next time. See y'all later. This has been Midnight with Mario. Bye-bye.
Bye.